Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're ready.
We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Approve the agenda. Are there any additions?
Mr. Chairman, I do have two additions on, excuse me, the consent agenda. Please add Commissioner's warrants to your packet of $1,319.09, 1319.09. That was an add-on Commissioner's warrant. And then under other business, I'd like to add approving request of special assessment abatements. I have two of them. So that's approving request of special assessment abatements for two. And that's all I have today, Mr. Chairman, for add-ons.
Mr. Chair, with those two additions, I'll move the agenda.
We have a motion.
Second.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Approve the consent agenda. Approve the minutes from 10/12. Commissioner warrants with the add-on of 1319.09. The auditor warrants and the hospital warrants.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval.
I'll support that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Sheriff Freeman.
Morning.
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 A couple weeks ago, there were some questions about some travel out of state and some over expense. I talked to Steve about that. We got that worked out, figured out. But as we were talking, came to my attention that he didn't know, and you guys probably don't know what the DRE program is. So I thought I'd have these guys come down, explain kind of why we're doing it and what it is. And so they're happy to come down and explain the training, what it involves, because that's what it was about in Philadelphia. 10 years ago, we'd pull a car over for over the road. 19 out of 20 times you take them in Toxlizer, they were drinking. Anymore, half of them maybe. So okay, now what do? You got to have the driving conduct. And now you take them to Toxlizer, and they're blowing zeros. Well, so you just let them go? That's not the answer either. They're obviously on something. But to take the next step, which is to get a warrant from a judge to take their blood or urine, you have to have the next step, which is a drug recognition expert. And for that, you have to have a lot of training and be certified by the state. And then they can run their test and say, okay, this person's on a stimulant or whatever. And then that gives us a right to. The judge will give us a warrant, and then we can do the blood work or whatever next step is. So, and the state pays for it all. It's training's free, hotel's free, the flights are free, everything's free except for the food. But I mean, it's basically free training. There's one trooper in the area that does it now. Sergeant Rowden's been 3 years now.
2018. Yeah.
And it was too much for him to get called out every night, So. Now Josh just agreed to do it and did it. We got a couple other ones for apply every year. Try to send another one through because it's, like I said, it's over 50% of our stops are not alcohol related, and I don't see that changing. So if you guys want to just go ahead and kind of explain what the training is, just a few of your numbers, just real short overview.
So we go up to the cities for 9 days, and throughout those 9 days, it's just solely classroom. We learn the different categories of the drugs. We learn all the indicators of what people would be showing on what kind of drug they're on. And then we do practice evaluations. It's a 12-step, scientifically proven, systematic evaluation. And then from that evaluation, we get to the results of, okay, they're on a CNS stimulant, or they're on a CNS depressant, or something like that. After we get that done, there's tests every day too, so a quiz or a test, and then at the end there's a final test for the classroom portion. Once you pass the final classroom test, Then they move you on to what they call the field certs, is where that Philly trip comes in. We went to Philadelphia. It was not a very good part of town. And then they grabbed volunteers, and we are doing 12 evaluations in front of DRE instructors throughout the state of Minnesota. And they sign off saying we're doing the right thing, and they agree with what we call for.
And it has to be backed up by toxicology results.
Yeah. So each person that we had do an eval, they were actually getting a drug test too, to make sure that we're calling the right drugs.
You got
So,
volunteers off the street?
yes.
Philadelphia.
That's why it is necessary to travel, because, I mean, because we do such a good job around here, we don't have it just laying in public view like you do in the big cities like that.
You
I'm
went
just
to Los
amazed that
Angeles,
somebody
right?
I went
volunteered.
to Sacramento.
Sacramento, okay.
So, yeah, and then we do 12 evals, and then at the end of that, there's a complete final knowledge exam that took about 4 hours. And then that's also looked at by 2 different instructors.
And that's straight up essay questions, like a full page.
It's not
or-
multiple
yeah,
choice. It's, you gotta type it all out and everything.
What you would see during your evaluation if this person uses that. Or,
And then once you're certified, then the courts recognize that as an expert, and then they'll take that information and give you the search warrant and, move forward, so. It's a lot of work.
I, for one, truly appreciate your guys' dedication, your professionalism, and you need to have the tools you need to do your job, and I appreciate you being willing to go above and beyond to do that. And don't by any means think that our questioning of the procedural about the paperwork, we're not micromanaging what you guys do. I think it's great.
no, and like I said, we like talking about it, and it's not a well-known thing. Even people that we arrest, they don't know they can be in trouble. Meth in their system. All the laws are because for possession, except when you're driving a motor vehicle.
Yep, under the influence, yeah.
But like
The hard
Sheriff,
part was proving it,
Yes.
Sure.
like Sheriff Freeman said, every officer in the state of Minnesota, through their skills, is trained to recognize impaired drivers. They administer a standard battery of 3 tests alongside the road. And then, based on that, they will administer a breath test, like Sheriff Freeman said. But what happens when it's zeros? Or it's well below what you're seeing impairment but the alcohol number is not matching the impairment you're seeing. There's probably something else on board then.
So yeah, I mean, like, all our guys know how to do field sobriety, but when they blow zeros in that intoxilizer, then they're like, okay.
So that's when we take that 12-step standardized,
Yep.
that's been challenged in court to be, and has been upheld as a scientific method. And like Sheriff Freeman says, DREs are certified, and the court has recognized that through challenges too, that a DRE, a drug recognition expert, can give their opinion in open court. And that's huge for a witness in open court.
Absolutely.
Most of the time, you're only allowed to stand up there and state facts, not your opinion.
Oh, wow.
Where a DRE, we can give our opinion.
Because you made field observations that you're reporting on.
And each of our evaluations is logged and tracked in a tracking site. We have to maintain, an acceptable level of toxicology results to back up what we've been calling.
Yeah.
So we don't just say this person's under the influence of a stimulant. We have to get a blood test, and that is logged. Well, we need that for charging purposes anyway. We need that for our log too, because they do monitor to make sure we are consistently calling, and that is backed up with the toxicology results.
And it's not even a question whether the particular drug that's in their system is a legal drug or an illegal drug. That's got nothing to do with it. If
No,
it's in your
absolutely
system, you're
not.
operating a vehicle, that's it.
That's correct. And it's defines drug as any substance which ingested into the human body can affect your ability to safely drive a motor vehicle.
So
And
that
includes,
prescription drugs.
prescription drugs is a big one nowadays. Like I said, briefly, just CNS stimulant is the most common one we see around here. That's your methamphetamine. With that, we have a lot of our youth is prescribed prescription amphetamines as well, Adderall and its off products. And with anything like that, it's abused by some people, and it's also sold.
Yep.
And then now, I would say cannabis is
Yeah.
coming up too.
With states legalizing
It's-
cannabis.
Everybody around us is legal, pretty much.
Yep.
It's probably just a matter of time here, but cannabis would be any of your marijuana products, your THC, gummies, stuff like that. I'd say third we see most of is CNS depressants, and that's where you talk mostly about your prescription medications. we're a society now that is prescribed anti-anxiety, antidepressants commonly, not because I think we have a problem, I just think it's more recognized now in the medical field now. But again, with anything like that, there's potential for abuse.
Yeah.
And DREs can help determine whether that person is actually under the influence and that it's impairing their ability to drive a vehicle versus they just take it as prescribed, which is a defense in the state of Minnesota. That's where DREs are huge to prove that impairment part. Because, and a lot of those drugs, just because they find it in the system, the state of Minnesota does not recognize that as an automatic DWI like it would if you're over a .08 on alcohol or if you have meth or cocaine in your system. So that's why it's huge to determine that.
Yeah.
And that's why the blood test is so important, because you can get levels in their system. Are they taking it as prescribed? Is it a therapeutic level or is it abuse level?
And how many cases have you done in the last 2 years?
I've done, since 2018, I've done 89 evaluations.
And that's why that's too much for one person.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. Of those 89 cases, how, percentage-wise, of those that were, those that weren't?
We were running about 50-50
Yeah.
before the pandemic. Now it's more, I'd say, because when the pandemic set in, bars, restaurants closed. People still bought their alcohol, but they went home and drank and didn't leave.
Yeah.
They had nowhere to go. Bowling, darts, none of that was going on. They can't do that with drugs. They still need to move around to find the drugs.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're probably 60-40 now. Drugs to alcohol, DWIs. Hundreds of DWIs in those 3 years, probably over half are drug ones.
Well, again, I appreciate the job you do, and I'm sure that most of the drivers out on the road appreciate the job that you're doing.
And we enjoy doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we really thank you for
Thank you
bringing
for your
us.
time.
you guys. Thank
Thanks for
you.
letting us talk about it.
Thank you, guys.
Come again.
Yeah, actually, Keith, I
You guys,
I
what's going
enjoy
on.
this
is
information,
fascinating.
Keith, so keep bringing them down.
Mr. Chairman, based on the information that Sheriff Riemann brought forth, I would recommend that from the last commissioner's warrants from 10/8, that the meals for Deputy Watts' travel to Philadelphia be approved to the $40 a day limits that the county has set under policy.
So moved.
Recommend a motion for that.
So moved.
And second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Brings to mind one thing we might want to consider in the future. You mentioned the $40 a day limit. We might need to take another look at that sometime.
When we reorganize,
Yeah.
that'll be on
Yeah,
the board.
we should remember that, to look at that.
Yeah, I will make sure it's on the agenda for the first meeting in January.
Mr. Bergman?
Having on the mister.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Nick.
Two quick items for me today. First one is an amendment to, excuse me, the agreement for the grant for the Indian Lakes Trail project. All that is they're extending the completion date for the paperwork till the end of 2022. The contractor's not getting back to us very quick on filing some things out. I suspect that that's because they're still trying to finish their construction for this year, but, so the state just said, well, the easiest way to fix that would be just extend it a year, so. The work's done out there, it's just the paperwork we need to get wrapped up, so. The state, suggested these changes, we just need, board approval to make them official.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval.
And I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And then, Steve, I put that folder on the pile of stuff there. Next item I have then would be to purchase our salt and sand for the upcoming snow plowing season. Fortunately, it's right around the corner, so we want to be ready for it. We got 2 bids on sand, 2 local bids on sand, and then the salt bid is off the state contract. And, you know, as you see here, we put down the quantities, but, you know, trucks don't get loaded that exact. It's probably going to vary just a little bit, but, you know, that's our target anyway, so. And these are typical quantities that we usually see, so.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the request for the sand and for the salt for the year.
I'll support that.
Okay, any further discussion? Not, all in favors?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Which sand bid are you gonna take?
The low bid, the one in bold there, Buffalo Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I made that assumption, but thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for me? Otherwise, that's all I had for today.
Please leave. He's just recovering from COVID, so.
All right, have a good day.
Stay healthy, Nick.
Nick?
No, he's getting closer.
Okay, do we want Wayne now, or?
If he's here, we can get him.
Presume he's on his way.
Momentarily.
There he is.
Good morning, Wayne.
Hi, Wayne.
Okay, we got a bid from Doubly Gravel to do the tiling and insulate and waterproof the walls in the EMS house, which you can see was $7,800, and then $750 for insulation, and the $350 for the waterproofing, and then $550 is for the 2-inch pipe from the house to the curb. Then we'll have to have a plumber come in and do the inside stuff. And then they'll have to remove the air conditioner and reinstall it too, and then we'll have some other work too, that while put the concrete back in, which might not get done until next spring.
Are you gonna cement back to the house again? Why don't
We'll bring it up a little higher.
we'll pour a curb there so it can't,
You're right. Yeah, we can. We can look at that, because it won't get done this year. I know.
no.
So on the south side of the house, you're gonna have to take out the entire driveway or just a
No.
piece of it?
I think 4 foot, that's what they're figuring.
So you're gonna have to cut it.
They're gonna have to cut it.
Mr.
just have to
Chairman,
put
the problem is
gravel
that
back
it's draining backwards towards the house.
Yes.
They didn't get
Yeah.
it, there's no slope, it's sloping the wrong way, and it's unfortunately been that way since we bought the house.
We've known this for
Yeah,
quite
this
a
is
while.
this is
Yes.
not an unknown.
And I know we tried different things there with the dehumidifier and sump pumps and so forth, but still a wet basement. And this looks like a pretty reasonable bid on this. I hate spending the money on it, but at the same time, we've got to protect the,
Oh, if we don't, we're gonna have more expense.
exactly, yep.
So
So,
too much humidity, it's not good for the EMTs that are staying there overnight.
No.
It's not a.
exactly.
Yeah, you don't want, you don't want mold building up in there neither.
Yeah.
Needs to be done.
Timing wise, does Double D think they can get this done yet this fall?
I haven't talked to them.
Okay.
I'll talk to them.
Okay, good enough. Well, Mr. Chair, I will move that we approve the estimate here. This is an estimate or a bid?
This is a bid.
Bid. Then for the 8,700, realizing that there'll be some other cost as well with
Yeah.
the,
I will second it. Any further discussion?
I just would agree with what Dan stated, and this is a really good bid for all the work that's getting done in there,
Right.
so.
And just, Mr. Chairman, just for the minutes, Wayne did attempt to get a second quote for this, but wasn't able to get anybody to provide one. So we did our due diligence on that.
Good enough.
It's hard getting second bids.
yeah, it is.
Get the first one.
I know, sometimes it is. Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Eddie.
you.
Bet.
Kathy. Personnel.
We're cooking today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Kathy.
I have a couple hiring and salary pay plan requests this morning for the board consideration. The first one is the highway accountant. We do have a contingent offer out to, Danielle Hoppert is her name. She's hoping to start next Monday, November 1st. And we're looking at step C of the pay plan, that $22.30 per hour. She does have a 2-year degree in accounting and some internship experience with an accountant, so we feel that she should start a little bit higher on the pay plan. So looking at step C, $22.30 per hour, looking for board approval of that for Danielle Hoppert.
I move for approval.
Yeah, and I will second.
Any further discussion? Not? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. The next request I have is for the auditor treasurer. So we have gone through our entire hiring process for that. We advertised for a month, I think, 3 to 4 weeks for that. We had 13 applicants. First round interviews, we interviewed 8. Second round of interviews, we interviewed 4, and those took place yesterday. It included myself and Steve, Les and Chris as the 2 commissioner representatives, and 2 staff from the auditor treasurer's office, Pam and Sandy. We did come to a decision to offer it to Amanda Barson Sandy. And we did make that offer yesterday afternoon. She considered it, called back this morning. I do need board approval of that, and we're looking at step H on the pay plan, which I've circled there. She is a CPA. She's got 20 plus years of experience. So we feel this is a reasonable salary offer for her.
Excuse me, what was the name again?
Amanda Barson Sandy.
Mr. Chair, move for approval.
Yep, I will second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Where's her previous experience?
She worked for Mulebrook and Taubert for about 16 years. And then she also, her most recent job is payroll manager at Pipestone Systems
Okay.
for the last 5 or 6 years.
And she's held her CPA for how many years, do you know? For quite a while.
Since 1999, I think,
Millbrook
somewhere in
time.
there.
Yep.
Yep, I'd have to go back and look at the exact dates, but
Well, thank you and the Personnel Committee for this exhausted search, and you did a good job. It's nice to have a good field of candidates to pick from, and I think that you did a good job here.
Mr. Chair, yeah, they, Kathy and Steve provided 4 very good candidates for us to go, and the decision wasn't easy, we'll say that, because they're all very qualified and I had a lot to bring, a lot to offer, but it was really important to the staff of this auditor treasurer having the CPA. It was very important to them, and it's a big reason why we made this position appointed too. Right. You know, just I wanted to clarify that too, so.
And I concur with that. It's not an easy decision to make on a lot of stuff because you've got such good candidates, but you also know how important it is for the health of the county to have a good auditor treasurer in there, but also how much it affects these people's lives as well too. So it's not an easy decision, and I appreciate the good job you guys did on a very difficult task. So I think she's going to be a good fit.
Okay.
When is she available to start?
she is thinking December 1st or 2nd. She does
December.
have to give a 4-week notice at her current position, so we're looking around the 1st of December.
Oh, yeah.
Any other discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, that's all I have for now, but we are still hiring 2 positions, the extension admin and the corrections admin. So I'll have some information on that at the next board meeting, so.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
You want to do your tax request?
Sure. Mr. Chairman and board members, I handed out this morning a request from the Auditor Treasurer's Office for 2 abatement of special assessments. These parcels are both tax forfeited property, and those assessments need to be taken off. And those are for, the special assessments are recycling fees for that. So obviously, while they're under assessment, there wasn't a whole lot of recycling going through there anyway. So to help to clean that up, these 2 parcels, parcel 1 is in the city of Edgerton, parcel number 13-351-0200 under Shauna and Stephen Van Dyke, and that's for $40.32 because there's a little bit of penalty on there that needs to come off as well. And then also the other parcels in Holland, 19.241.0340, taxpayer Todd DeRuyter, and again, the same amount, $40.32. One motion, you can do one motion for both of them, that's fine.
Okay, and I'll make that motion that we approve these 2 abatements then for the $40.32 twice.
I will second.
And again, this is a one-time, Steve, this is ongoing.
No,
Yep.
this is one time.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, you want to highlight on the AMC?
Sure. Members of the board, I passed out this morning in your packet, you have the potential 2022 AMC legislative priority items ballot. If you've had time to review those at all, those are going to be discussed at the meeting on Thursday in Worthington, the AMC meeting. So they wanted each county to take a look at the items and basically choose one from each of the categories of environmental and natural resources, general government, and health and human services, public safety, and transportation infrastructure. Attached to the backside of it is the background on each of the legislative priority items as addressed by AMC. So they're looking for each county to discuss and take a look and see which ones out of each of those categories they would like to bring forward at the AMC meeting on the 28th in Worthington, so they could get it aggregated throughout the state and see where we're at. And then at the AMC conference in December, at the committee meetings, these will come up again. So it's just kind of a preliminary. So if you have any thoughts or ideas of what you would want the county to choose as priorities, we could have that discussion on that.
And as they're listed here on the ballot, that's just a numerical listing, there's no weight assigned to
No, they're not weighted.
weighted at all.
No, it's just the listing that came up in the policy committee meetings that they had.
What are your wishes?
I'm not really sure if we can, if I'm prepared to make a choice at this time. I really don't know. I'd be looking for more information. I guess I'm looking for that from our Thursday meeting. I think there'll be some there as well too, so it's good going into it, being aware of it.
Sure.
How about you personally, Steve? Do you have any preferences yourself that you've seen so far? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I guess I would, on the environmental and natural resources, as Chairman Johnson is very active in those groups, I would defer to him on anything involved in that whatsoever. And looking for on the government, each county has different needs. Where I look at items like out-of-home placement, there are counties, for instance, in our health and human services district where Redwood County has a greater number of out-of-home placements than we do is possibly more, applicable to them, where we do have some. I pass out every month in the Health and Human Services packet I get, I put the notice in your information in your box of what we got for out-of-home placements, and ours stays pretty steady, one off, one up, one down, that type of thing. But I think in general government, the one that I think is very important, and this might tie into our Prime West, is AMC supports a legislative study outlining impacts of Health and Human Services mandates on counties' levies, operations, and taxes.
That was the one I was going to bring up, because we know in the past.
Very important one to
And
consider.
it doesn't specifically say county-based purchasing, as we know that's been a major, major problem in Health and Human Services. And again, it's not universally shared throughout the state. Some other people that aren't involved in county-based purchasing, so we've really had to beat the drum hard on this one. And I don't really see it specifically spelled out here.
I guess speaking on the transportation infrastructure, I've been on that committee now for 5 years, so the number 21 there is one that we've really brought through in the last year or whatnot, because it was talking about bringing in new revenues and finding avenues for new revenues for transportation infrastructure. Otherwise, the other ones that we've been basically been talking about for years now, number 22 and number 23. 23 is important, especially with new money being in for broadband now too, so that is something to consider, because I really don't see the private industry moving into filling that gap at all. So that's something to consider too. So those would be two considerations for that I would suggest anyway.
Yeah. Les, how about you with public safety? You're more dialed into that.
I'm general government.
Oh, you're general government.
Yep.
On public safety, I'm jaded on this one, but number 16 is important to me in my prior life as EMS, that the regional EMS boards are a very important part of providing training and financial support to all of our ambulance services and first responder squads, even law enforcement and fire services as well. And they need more money. They're dependent on seatbelt funding, and seatbelt funding has been continually dropping year after year because of compliance issues, and the money has not gone up. They did get a one-time allocation to each of the 8 districts in the latest round of legislative information and law, that they got an additional $100,000 for each of the 8 districts in the state. So that helps a lot too. And one thing that's not shown here, but the regional EMS boards are highly active in distributing Narcan to fire, EMS, emergency responders, law enforcement. That's where, and it's free to us to use in case there would be an opioid overdose. And honestly say, we have used in the service here in Pipestone several times Narcan. Our deputies have used it several times as well. And they're able to utilize the money that they get from the state to purchase that, and then distribute it for free to the first responder squads, ambulance services, law enforcement, and fire service that provide EMS as well. So, they are doing good work out there for our communities and our counties. Our local representative is Danielle Thompson from EMS. She's our representative from the county. She's appointed to that. Casey does go to the meetings as well. I've been on it for years too. I'm still listed as an alternate board member as needed, but that to me that's important. But I'm kind of partial to that. But I think it's important. But I think it's important. But all of the other items that they list there are ultimately important as well. Number 19 specifically talking about mental health. Mental health is an ongoing issue that's going to go on for years and years and years, and how that's dealt with in the public safety arena, in the jail setting and in prison settings is very important as well. There's lots and lots of mental health issues out there, so that's important as well to all of us. Armor system, Les sits on that board. Armor is very important to keep our radio system going. There's going to need constant funding going forward to that as upgrades are needed, and no upgrades to Armor are inexpensive, just as we learned when you approved the Vesta project 2 weeks ago when Sheriff Freeman was here and Chief Deputy Heyman, as we're moving forward with that. So those costs continue to go up, so adequate funding needs to go up as well, and the state needs to fund it as well, and obviously we have skin in the game too on
Right.
the subscriber side of it as being the users of it, but that needs to be funded as well, so it takes money for everything.
Takes a lot of money.
I think it's fair to say of these 24 items listed here, there's not a single one that's frivolous.
Right.
They're all important. All of them are. You mentioned the Narcan, had a little training through SMOC with that as well too. And again, we have to keep in mind the ongoing funding for it because that does have a shelf life, that stuff.
It does.
That has to be continually replenished.
I guess I'd look at this, take a look at these and let's prepare if you're going to the meeting on Thursday. It will be talked about at the AMC meeting in Worthington. We'll talk about it more there, but this is the list that you're going to be seeing throughout the meetings throughout the fall. This will be what we're working towards on AMC as we go into the legislative conference as the legislature goes into session next year as we go there. So these will be your issues that the AMC wants us to take a look at, so.
And we've seen them all before. None of these are new.
Right.
No.
Yeah, they've been there for a few years.
So this is more of a discussion than an action item. So I would, no action is required at this time on it, but.
Okay, you want to talk about the mask mandate for the court?
Sure. I put in your packet a copy of an order I received this last Friday that the Judge Gildea, Chief Justice of the court system, put out another order that effective on October 19th, every person entering a court facility must wear face coverings at all times when the public area is served by the judicial branch or other areas of the facility and in courtroom during proceedings. Okay, so basically what's coming down to is everybody that goes to the second floor here has to wear a mask. So I requested, and through court administration to Natalie Reich, that signage be put up in the areas where they're expecting it. Signage is placed on the stairways going up, on the windows for those coming in, and on their doors as they're going up to court. So we are not, as the county, going forward with a mask mandate at this time. We are more local. This is done on a statewide level for all court services. So they obviously have different areas that are having higher incidence of COVID and more issues with that than we are here in our area at this time. So I'm not prepared to recommend that the county move forward with a mask mandate at this time, but anyone going to court upstairs will have to have a face covering according to their rules. They have their own masks available. Someone doesn't have one. So it's informational. You don't have to take any action on this. We've taken care of this on the administration end of it. So just you're aware of it, that it is required if you're going up to court. Masks are required in all court facilities throughout the state of Minnesota. So that's informational. No action required on that. Any questions or comments?
Any comments from anybody? Okay, you want to highlight on the budget report?
Sure. Went through, I have some board members like to have a copy of the quarterly report, so I did put that in your packet as well if you wish to go back and take a look at that. But primarily going through it, we are on target for where we should be for the third quarter. We have some areas that obviously we haven't spent any money. Our enhanced 911, for instance, our costs are down on that. Other areas, the Sheriff General, we're at 100% of expenses right now, and we're going into the fourth quarter, so I'm assuming we'll see some more expenses on there. But again, the budget is a budget. It's not an exact science when we do these. Things do come up throughout the year. We have had to replace vehicles in the sheriff's office that have been, unfortunately in crashes. And those costs go up because you have to not only replace vehicles, you have to replace the cages and anything else, the front ends, the bumpers, the electric lighting, the lighting systems. It all bounces up when you do that.
Just ask scrolls.
Yep. But fortunately, we have insurance that covers a fair share of that as well, so it does help. But those costs do go up, and they all do a great job as well on that. So overall, looking through it, we're on target where we should be for our budget going forward into the fourth quarter, and I'm very pleased where we're at. So,
Thank you. Okay, move on to committee reports. Ellis?
Me up? September, we had lots of regular meetings and lots of hospital meetings. We had, I had one extra one. It was an insurance meeting that we met down here with Kathy. And we talked about that at our meeting last week, so really nothing else to report from that. The Trotsky City, Steve went to their council meeting and about their sewer project. And you invited me to go along, Steve, but my computer was down at that time, so I did not get that invitation, so I would have been there otherwise, but thank you for attending that, and they appreciated the information. I talked to the guys there, and basically, you said don't turn down any other grants, but
No, absolutely not. No, they need to use all the funding they're getting for this project from wherever, and I said, we want to be your gap funding,
Yeah.
is what I tried to explain to them, that there are areas that aren't covered by grants or loans, that type of thing, that, you know, we could possibly step in and utilize some of our ARP money to help there.
yeah, that's been an ongoing project, and I think they've reapplied for some of those grants 2 or 3 times because they've been at it for 10 years and you just can't get them. But it looks like they got land purchased now and they're gonna do something. The landscaping is out there, the engineer was out there and stuff, so that's a good thing for that area. And last census, Trotsky gained people, so they're gonna need it. One other thing in my district is library, the Plum Creek Library, and I had a meeting in Slayton the other night. They have a new director. Her name is Elizabeth Hoffman. She started yesterday, I think. Yeah. So that's a good, I did not catch where she came from. Sounded like an education background. So, and they're happy, they're thrilled. So, and in the library vein, I was asked to go to the Edgerton City Council meeting, and at the report I was supposed to give was about what we've been doing. And City Council meeting usually have 8-10 people, and there was 50-60 people there. So I got to give my report in front of 50-60 of my neighbors, which I wasn't prepared for.
How many of them are your friends yet?
Well, I said neighbors, not friends. But they are, their library leader, Dina Burgorsh is her name, rallied that many troops to come to the city council meeting to lobby for more money. And that was a good thing for me to see. And that's why we think Plum Creek is important to Edgerton for sure. And just some of the facts and figures she gave in Edgerton Library is the 3rd in the county of people checking out stuff. And they're first by checking out per person. And if I remember right, it was first in the state. Is that correct?
Total circulation per capita.
Per member, not necessarily per capita.
Well, they're per capita.
They got 1,208 people signed up for library cards. In a town of 1,200, that's pretty good. Just wanted to let you guys know that. And that ends my report.
Dan.
In September, then, on the 1st, I had a union negotiations meeting then with Southwest Health and Human Services.
Right.
To get all the initials straight in my head. And we had about 6 different back and forths on it with various proposals, so forth. And at the end, then their union rep did decide to go to arbitration, and that is scheduled for, I believe, November 4th. So we'll see how that works out once it goes to arbitration. Then on the 2nd, last you and I had our Prime West meeting, then up in, I guess that was still a Zoom meeting yet. Yeah, September was Zoom for both of us. Or were you there in September?
I've been
You
there.
were there in September, and I had Zoomed it. That's how that one had worked. Along with that, we've got the financial board that I sit on with Prime West, and we have that before the regular board meeting. And one of our normal routines with that is to debate the merits of any appeals on our denials. The various providers have to submit their bills in a timely manner, and it has to be done in accordance with their format. And occasionally that gets skewed for one reason or another. So we do normally review those and then take the recommendation then of the staff as far as whether or not to uphold or turn over the denial. It's kind of 50-50 either way. If there's a good reason for it, if there's been education on their part of their billing people so they understand the importance and what the breakdown was. So that's part of the normal financial meeting that we have. Then on the 8th, we had our Pipestone Area Coalition meeting with the school. As you know, I think we've reported before that the original grant now is expired and we're under a new 5-year grant as well too, so we're continuing that good work. On the 9th, we had our hospital board education. On the 10th, then I had my Southwest Mental Health 18 Consortium. Kind of the same things we talked about before with our other mental health. Staffing is always an issue. Department of Health is always, as far as reimbursement, is always a challenge. And of course, getting, as we know, psychiatrists and staff and so forth is a huge challenge. From there, I moved down to the 24th. We had a potential wage meeting with the hospital, that we discussed that, and as you know, we took action on that last week. On Monday the 27th, I had my Rural Minnesota Energy Board meeting over at Slayton. More work being done on solar, and of course some of the changes in some of the ordinances, and we've got some of the tax changes on some of those units that aren't in production. As we know, it's based on power production versus a property value. Then on the 30th, then we had a building and grounds meeting then with our building committee and Wayne and so forth, and some of the different items we discussed are going forward on those. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chris?
On the 8th, I had Southwest Mental Health. We met in Laverne on the 8th. And then 9th, again, the PCMC board education that we all attended. 13th, I had the Towards Zero Death, Lincoln Pipestone Safe Road Coalition. That was held on Zoom. I'm just going to throw out some data from that. Deaths, motor vehicle deaths are up 25% over last year, and actually we're having the most deaths since 2010. And then I'm just going to read a quote from the Minnesota Traffic Safety Director. He said, "What's so disheartening is when the pandemic hit, an increase in dangerous driving choices by Minnesotans soon followed. These choices continue to plague roads a year and a half later. Speed is contributing to so much tragedy, and this summer is no exception. Talk to your family and friends about safe driving choices. Model that behavior. We can all make those simple decisions to drive smart and live." And just speed-related deaths is up over 50%, so it's just
Crazy.
It's really plaguing us right now. So, continuing on, we had Southwest Mental Health in Worthington on the 22nd. On the 25th, met up in Morris for CPT. We're not meeting this month. Long story short, is instead of allocating money back to all the counties this year for their buy-in, the initial buy-in, they pool that money to give to CPT to use to outsource some of their shortfalls with some of the other programs right now. They're really focusing on their tax rewrite and getting that done by deadline. So any other programs that have issues, they're contracting those out. At our last meeting, they hadn't contracted anything out, but they had been in talks with a few companies. So just trying to streamline their whole process. That tax rewrite's really important. And on that too, they hired one more full-time developer for that too.
Chris, had you said before that our initial investment, that we've already received a fair amount of that back already?
I think we've gotten 60-75% back, haven't we?
Something like that. It's really been a good program for us.
Didn't we put in 150, wasn't it?
Yes, 150,000.
And I think we've got, I want to say 75 back?
Sounds about right.
Sounds
7,500. Yep.
75,000?
Or 75,000. Yes. So, and then it's kind of what the discussion revolved around too. It doesn't necessarily need to be a moneymaker. We'd like to get the money back that we put into it, yes, but after that, it's talking about just reinvesting more into the company and into the services. So that's more important really than paying the counties back at this point. So on the 26th, we squeezed in a road and bridge committee meeting in between the hospital board and the regular board meeting. Just talk about the different road allocations, whatnot that we voted on last time we met. And then again, PCMC later that day. And that's all I had for September.
Okay, on the 2nd, Prime West, Dan kind of talked about that. On the 8th, had a Southwest Mental Health meeting. Then on the 9th, we had the Board of Education at PCMC. On the 15th, Health and Human Services. That was pretty much a standard meeting. It was a short meeting that day, if I remember right. Then on the 16th, we had Building and Grounds. On the 20th, I had Southwest Pick up in Marshall. On the 22nd, Radio Board in Marshall. And then that evening, we had Southwest Mental Health in Worthington. And on the 28th, Hospital Board and Commissioners meeting. Then on the 30th, had Union meeting, and then also Building and Grounds. That's about it. Is there anything else that has come before this board today?
I had asked Steve to contact Luke Como. Do you want to talk about that at all? Steve, that he's going to come and visit?
Yeah, I'll just, at our next meeting on the 9th, we will have our home tax abatement for Pipestone building, Pipestone Development Company that Jeremy was here about. I wasn't able to get the publishing done in time for today. We didn't have 2 weeks' time. But I only had 4 Tuesdays instead of 5, so 5 Tuesdays really makes life easier sometimes. So, and talked with Luke Como. He will be attending the November 9th meeting as well for an update from Southwest Mental Health.
You know, after we talked on the phone that day, I was thinking about it later that night, and then I went back through some of, way back, when we first started talking about this, is when he talked about having one office. And it hasn't been talked about since, has it, Chris?
Oh.
But it was talked about in the beginning that Pipestone would have an office, whether it's just a one-room deal or something.
That's right, because he said even exploring in somewhere in the basement here or somewhere
Yeah.
too.
Well, yeah.
So.
And I guess
That's
that
right
was my concern. That's why I asked Steve to reach out to him, because I would like to hear from him directly just what his plans are to take care of the needs of our people here in this area.
After we talked about it, I kept thinking, and then I went back and stuff, and it was mentioned maybe it was back in August, July.
Yeah, that's been a while probably, yeah.
But I kept thinking about it, and then it finally come to me. It was mentioned, but it hadn't been talked about since.
And I know there'd been discussion about having the crisis, probably not the correct term, but for the telehealth, that if we have an individual that doesn't have the resources themselves in their own equipment, that they will be able to go somewhere and use equipment so they could telehealth in to talk to a professional. And whether or not we use Health and Human Services building for that. So there's just some details that seem to be a little bit blurry, so it'd be nice to hear directly
That was
from you.
talked about at the meetings. They were gonna use the interview room for that.
Yeah.
Because there'd be a computer in there. Somebody'd be able to set it up, get them started, leave the room, and they could have their Zoom meeting with the professionals.
But thank you, Steve, for reaching out to Luke for me.
Absolutely, he was more than
Come in, that would be great.
willing to come on the 9th, so. Didn't work out for today, did too many things, too short a notice for him for
Right.
today, but 9th said it would be fine, so I've got him on the agenda for that.
Mr. Chairman, I have one thing, that information, we're looking for some input at our Plum Creek Library Board meeting the other day. It was in Slayton, and it was also on Zoom. And one of the commissioners that was there was adamant that we should not be allowed to have a Zoom meeting anymore. Does anybody know for sure what that, he was worried about violating the open meeting law, and he requested all our votes be a roll call vote. So we were,
It'll be a roll call. The way it's been put to me, we have this discussion at radio board because we cover 13 counties. And the way we decided, if you're gonna be on Zoom, it has to be publicized where you're gonna meet, like a regular special meeting. So it's in a public place, and it has to be a roll call vote. But then I've also heard the only way you can vote is if you're present. So there's some,
There is with my nurse family partnership we're having on the 1st. He sent it out ahead of time saying that if anyone wants to attend via Zoom and vote, that you have to get ahead of him by this date so he can post on the agenda ahead of time that you're going to be meeting at
such and
such or
such.
such location. He's urged them to be
Either
a
your
public
house
place.
or
No, he urged a
not
public
house.
place, like a commissioner's room or.
yeah,
city.
when Luke does it here, he actually has to post it.
Yeah, it's got to be available to the public. That's, nothing can be done in secret. That was part of that we talked about early on as we were changing from pandemic and the state changed how they're going to do the Zoom meetings and go back to the way it actually was before, where we had, because of the governor's emergency
Declaration.
powers, we were able to do things differently. But since those have since ceased, we've got to go back to following the statute on it under the telecommunications and meetings. So, is right, the meetings do need to be noticed, that it's going to be Zoom, where it's going to be held. And if you're going to attend, it needs to be in a public place unless you want to invite people to your home and call that a public place and have your doors open so anybody can come in and visit you there. But having it at a boardroom here,
But does that have to be announced in a public paper for 2 weeks too then?
no.
72 hours.
72 hour.
Yeah, this is a committee meeting, more or less. Your
Yeah.
normal channels through the library would be posting the meetings. They send me anything that's going to be held here. I, of course, put it on the bulletin board, but I don't have to notice it in the paper because it's not a county meeting. If the county was going to do one, yes, then I'd be responsible for doing it. If we were going to have a meeting where one of you had to be gone, and we'd notice that, and where you were going to be, that it was public, so the public could be there.
So that probably why Luke isn't zooming in on this one? Or,
There are other issues going on as well today.
Anything else come before the board? Not entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.
Ooh, under an hour.
Don't get used to this.
I know. That's an anomaly.